Let's talk here about Kentucky basketball's matchup with the LSU Tigers. I waited a little bit, as I normally do on Monday, to do this preview episode because you have to wait for the injury report to kind of see what's going on, and I was looking more for news about Kentucky, specifically with Lamont Butler or any other player on the roster that could be probable, questionable, out, etc. So Lamont Butler is good to go. The only two players that are listed are both Robinson and Kriisa, who are out. And then you look at the LSU side of things, and that's where I want to start here with the LSU Tigers, who are currently 14-15, number 77 on KenPom. They are injured very badly, as badly as Kentucky is, as a matter of fact. One of their leading scorers, Jalen Reed, has been out. He is still out. He's only played 8 games this season. And that's not the news here. It's 3 other contributors. Victorious Miller, 9 points per game, doubtful in this game after suffering an ankle injury, I believe, in the previous contest against Mississippi State. Yeah, that's correct. Victorious Miller, 9 points per game, doubtful. Corey Chest, a freshman forward, doubtful in this game. 6.1 points per game, 6.6 rebounds per game. And I believe it's Digi Bailey, or G, I don't know how to pronounce his first name. It's DGI, very interesting first name. He is listed as probable at 8.4 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game. So Miller and Bailey are actually two players in their most common 5 that they put out there over the last 5 games. So they are 2 of the most utilized player over the last 5 contests. And one of them is listed as doubtful after hurting himself in the previous game, and the other is listed as probable. I don't know what Bailey's injury is. I don't know what Chest's injury is either. But that's 4 guys, count them up, 4, as my friends like to do, that will not contribute at least at 100% against Kentucky, and 3 of them might not contribute at all. It's really interesting how down the stretch, everybody has kind of been able to fight off injuries to some extent, or at least different teams in the conference have been able to get guys back. But you look at teams like LSU, like Kentucky, they feel snake bitten in a way. I think that's a very fair way to put this. So LSU coming into this game, having lost 3 straight, they are 3-13 in conference play, will be without, obviously, Jalen Reed, who is a big-time player for them, I believe, last season, and then 2 different players that are doubtful in Miller and Chest. Bailey, will see what happens with him. Statistically, if you want to look right now, this LSU team is just not very good, especially on offense. They are a poor 3-point shooting team, and they like to take outside shots. They do not distribute the ball very well. Their leading assist man averages 2.4 assists per game, 2.6, excuse me. We'll get to him as an X factor in a moment. But they turn the ball over. They don't turn opponents over. They don't grab boards very effectively, especially so in conference play. Defensively, they do a decent job statistically at various things that aren't rebounding and creating turnovers, much like Kentucky. But if you get to their conference statistics, much like the Cats, you start to see a major fall off in production. This team, again, likes to take threes, but they are really bad at making them. But one of the guys that does lead the way and does a really good job of making outside shots is actually Cam Carter. Cam Carter has been a phenomenal guard for the Tigers so far this season, averaging 16.9 points per game and 2.6 assists per game, which again leads the team, shooting 39.6% from 3 and 43.7% from the floor. At 6'3", he is a 190. He's a decently sized PG, more of a scoring first type point guard, obviously. But he's been super fun to watch in contributing against some major competition so far this season. I might add, he is somebody that Kentucky is going to have to keep an eye on. You look to his 24-point performance against Auburn earlier this season, where he went 5 of 12 inside, 2 of 2 outside, hit 8 free throws, also had 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and a steal in that game. It was the only reason it was competitive down the stretch against the number 1 team in the country that Kentucky just got blown out by. So Carter, I think, is your X factor here as somebody that you have to look to. Somebody else that I think we should go ahead and note that's going to get a lot of run in this game, especially if Bailey and Chest are not as healthy as the injury report indicates, is Damian Collins. As we all remember, Collins, who transferred out of Kentucky a few seasons ago. He's been at LSU for 2 now. He has been a really solid shot blocker for them over the past 2 years, very much so this season. Super efficient shooting the ball. He is shooting 67.9% inside the arc. He's got a decent foul line rate as well. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton whenever he does have it, and he's utilized on a decent amount of possessions. I think he's going to be asked here against Kentucky's front court to do a lot. And I know that there has been some bad blood with different players that have transferred out, at least amongst fans. You hear the booing at the Arkansas game. You hear the booing at the Ohio State contest as well. I think that almost every person watching this show, I would like to think every person that does consider themselves a Cats fan would go out and show Collins as much support as possible tomorrow, because of the things that he's had to deal with in his past, some of the things that prompted him to leave the Wildcats, if I'm not mistaken. You don't quote me on that part, but man, it's been a rough go for Collins over the past several years of his life, and I think that he deserves some praise and some respect tomorrow whenever he does enter Rupp Arena again. I think that he's a great kid, a great player. I think that LSU obviously has leaned on him at various points this season pretty seriously. I think you look at that Arkansas game as well, where he had a phenomenal contest against the Hogs. Another person, much like Jax, where I have nothing but respect for, and I wish him the best. So, yeah, Cam Carter, I think, is your X factor here. You also look at Damian Collins as somebody that may get a larger role in this contest. And then the X factor for Kentucky, I think, is once again Amari Williams. Why? Well, if you want to go look at LSU right now, look at their roster, they do not have a single contributor that is listed at over than 220 pounds. The only player that was Jalen Reed at 6'10", 240. And he's not played hardly at all this season, only 8 games. And I think he hasn't played since December. So I think that that's a matchup that you simply have to take advantage of. Obviously, Garrison could be a major factor here. Carr could be somebody that you look at as well. But I think Amari, because of what he brings you, both on offense and defense, he's got to be somebody that steps up here and makes some big-time plays. Here's the final note that I want to have before I get to keys to the game real quick. Evan Mia, great analytics website. He has a rating on his team's page that shows you how good teams are versus opponents that are better or worse than them. So a larger red bar means that you punch above your weight class. Whenever you go against competition that's better than you on paper, you play better than you normally do, or at least relative to teams that you play that are worse than you. You kind of punch above and you punch below whenever you play worse teams. And a negative blue bar means that you are what you are against teams that are either the same quality as you or worse, but whenever you play teams that are better than you on paper, you get destroyed. LSU is the 9th worst team in the nation versus opponents that are better than them on paper. So that's kind of where I'm leaning in this game. I'm going to go ahead and give you my final score. I think this Kentucky wins this one. I think they win at 82-73. I think that's the final score. Lines at like 12.5. If somebody like Bailey is able to go, and LSU, who I think their only redeemable factor statistically is the fact that they shoot a pretty decent percentage from inside the arc, I think that will keep them at somewhat in this game. I think it'll allow them to cover. I think Kentucky will be up by enough at the end of the game where it doesn't really matter. But keys to the game here, I don't think Kentucky, I think they need to make sure they don't turn the ball over. Don't do that crap that you pulled against Auburn again, or I will lose my mind. Obviously, me losing my mind has no cause of anything that Kentucky could do post my freak out. But just for the sake of all of us, please don't do that again like you did against Auburn. I think you have to protect the rim. Again, 55.7% is what Kentucky's shooting on the season from 2. You have to make sure you control that. This is a team that will give you gravity from 3, but I think the rim is where you live and die here. I think you have to make Brea shoot the ball. Make him shoot the ball, man. And whatever you have to do to get him open, make it happen. And then I think the final thing here is I think you have to grab second chance boards. LSU is last in SEC play in offensive rebound percentage, giving up 37.3%. Jeez. On the season, again, against SEC competition. So don't turn the ball over, protect the rim, make Brea shoot, grab second chance boards. I think that will be the recipe for success in this one against an injury-depleted roster. Both of these teams dealing with a lot of different injuries. And speaking of, pause for water, one of those injuries that Kentucky has in Kerr Kriisa, he could come back next season. Like, it's officially on the table. And Pope talked about it. We'll discuss it here in just a second. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends, of course, over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I've really enjoyed using FanDuel's live betting feature. Keeps me in every single moment of the game, keeps it exciting, whether I'm backing my team, I'm trying to pull for a late rally from another one, I'm picking a player to hit a clutch shot at the end. I never really feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Pretty sweet deal. Just head to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. So let's get to the news surrounding Kerr Kriisa. So Kentucky posted about this on socials. I saw it on Twitter, where they went to a restaurant in Lexington that hosted the seniors with their families on the eve of senior night. Really cool moment. And you'll notice the players that are there in the photo. It's Brea, Carr, Butler, Robinson, Ainsley, and Williams. But you'll notice who's not there. Kriisa's not there. And Mark Pope, according to Jack Pilgrim of KSR, said that Kerr Kriisa was not invited to the dinner. Why was he not invited to a dinner for seniors? It was only, according to Mark Pope, for players that are out officially of college eligibility. He said, quote, "It's just for the guys that have 0 college eligibility left. Just those 6 guys. Kerr's got another year left, which is fantastic for all of us, right? Gentlemen, how much sense does Kerr Kriisa make on next year's roster with somebody like Jasper and a Caden in the backcourt? I've thought about this a little bit, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've continued to say I don't think it makes a ton of sense for next year's team. But upon further review, I think it makes perfect sense. I think bringing Kerr Kriisa back for a 6th season of eligibility makes perfect sense for Kentucky. Why? Look at the guards they're bringing in and look at the players that they have coming back. Otega Oweh is a shooting guard or a small forward. Tweener between the two. We'll put him at small forward because he doesn't really shoot threes. But he's still a bucket getter between those two spots, right? Jasper Johnson, combo guard. I think more of a shooting guard than a combo guard. Somebody that will thrive in an off-ball role. Caden Lewis, combo guard, more of a point, but I think that the scoring in him is Cam Carter-esque. If you would like to compare it to somebody. I'm so excited about Lewis, dude. I don't know what it is. I just really like his tape. Maybe I'll end up being completely wrong. He's the guy that I'm most excited about. And there's and guys like Marino and Jasper are like some players that could be here for a hot minute. That could be great. But Lewis is the guy that I'm fired up about. But I think you could play him in an off-ball role as well. You have Travis Perry returning right now, somebody that would play between the two, combo guard, but was a good shooting guard coming out of high school. We just talked about that in the preview episode, or just a few minutes ago, previewing this next game with what Kentucky's going to do now that Robinson is out. Colin Chandler is either a shooting guard or a small forward. Quite haven't figured that out yet. We will get to find it out next season if he stays, and I would expect that he does. We'll see. I don't know. Kentucky's got some work to do in the portal, man. That's all I'll say. And that's not relative to Chandler. I think they just need more athleticism and better shooting bodies, in my opinion. But Kriisa, leading assist man for Arizona in with their Pac-12 championship team a couple of years ago. You've got him leading the team in assist rate while he was on the floor before he got injured at like 30.5% or something crazy like that. point guard, flashy player, can shoot the three. It needs to improve on defense, but I think you can get that from other spots, like Chandler next season. I think it makes sense. I don't know if you're going to find somebody in the portal that is just as good of an assist man that can play significantly better defense while also being a plus shooter from three. I think that you kind of take what you can get, and Kriisa, I think, would make perfect sense as far as being able to distribute to some of the other shooters to kind of take some pressure off of next year's big men, whether that be Garrison or who have you, which I am of the strong opinion that Kentucky needs to do that. I think they need to get a center in the portal that can kind of be Amari Williams-esque. They're also, how do I say this? There is a player at Wyoming that I think you guys need to at least know about, Oweh Agabim. That's all I've got to say. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know anything. Personally, I don't know anything. But it seems to be the rumor on Twitter. We'll see what happens with Agabim. He seems to be a very explosive athlete that Kentucky could get for next season. The final thing I wanted to talk about on the show before we wrapped it up is something from Wildcats Tongue on Twitter, who does a phenomenal job covering Kentucky stuff. I believe he works with Rupp to no good a little bit as well. And he put out the most detailed SEC tournament scenarios. Put out a graphic like talking about the seeding for Kentucky if they finish 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. The best case, worst case, and most likely scenarios for each of Kentucky's possible finishes to the regular season. Again, Wildcats Tongue on Twitter. And I'm going to read these here for you real quick. If Kentucky goes 0-2, best case scenario is a 9 seed, likely scenario is a 10, worst is an 11. They will be a 9 seed if Mississippi State and Vanderbilt both also finish 0-2 alongside Kentucky. If Arkansas finishes 2-0 and Arkansas plays both Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, note there. And Kentucky is second in a 4-team tiebreaker with Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. The most likely scenario if Kentucky goes 0-2 is a 10 seed with Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas and Georgia all finishing 1-1. Kentucky finishes below Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, but just ahead of Arkansas and Georgia. And the worst-case scenario is an 11 seed where Georgia and Arkansas both finish 2-0, and Vanderbilt finishes 0-2. Vanderbilt plays both Arkansas and Georgia. Kentucky finishes above Vanderbilt in any tiebreaker. That would include the 11-seed spot. For me personally, at this point, I don't want to face, if I'm picking, I don't want to face Alabama and I don't want to face Florida coming out of either the Wednesday or Thursday matchups that Kentucky would have. I would like to face either Auburn or Tennessee, preferably Tennessee out of the four if I had to choose, which it really just does depend right now kind of like where Tennessee falls, because as it stands right now, they're fourth, and I need to pull up the SEC tournament bracket again because I need to be reminded kind of where Kentucky what would be playing the four, because the bracket's been expanded. Yeah, so the 5th seed would play the 4. So that's on the table here. We'll get to in a second. If Kentucky finishes 1-1, best case scenario is a 6 seed. A&M, Mississippi State, Mississippi, and Vanderbilt all finish 0-2. Florida then beats Alabama to earn the 2 seed. Likely scenario if Kentucky finishes 1-1 is the 8 seed, something that we have been talking about for literally a month. If Missouri beats UK and Oklahoma, and Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and A&M all finish 1-1, Ole Miss finishes 0-2. Kentucky would be second in a 4-team tiebreaker with Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss. Worst case scenario is a 10 seed if Kentucky finishes 1-1. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt both finishing 2-0. A&M having at least one game. And if the Cats finish 2-0, best case 5, likely 6, worst 8. 5 seed, if you're 2-0, will only happen if Missouri loses to Oklahoma and Kentucky. Both A&M and Ole Miss finish 1-1 or worse, and if A&M finishes 0-2 and Ole Miss finishes 1-1, and then if Florida beats Alabama. So it's A&M and Ole Miss 1-1 or worse, or if A&M finishes 0-2 and Ole Miss finishes 1-1 and Florida beats Bama. And Missouri would also have to lose to Oklahoma and Kentucky, which I don't think that's going to happen. So you look to the 6th seed. Missouri, A&M, and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt all finish 1-1. Ole Miss finishes 0-2, and Kentucky would be tied with A&M and would hold the tiebreaker. Worst case in which, by the way, that would put them right now It would have them playing as the 6 seed. They would play against the 14 or the 11. They'd play the 3 seed, which in this case currently would be Alabama. But we'll see if Tennessee wins their next game here against Ole Miss, which I think would play into the scenario there. Then Tennessee would hold the tiebreaker over Alabama, and then they would be 3rd, and Kentucky would play them as the 6th seed. The worst case scenario, that would be the 8th seed. Missouri beats Oklahoma, and A&M and Ole Miss both finished 2-0. So goodness gracious, you can finish between a 5 and an 11. Thank you so much to Wildcats telling you to go follow him on Twitter. I would strongly encourage you to do so.